Let's talk about one of modern medicine's most daunting challenges, ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a truly devastating disease that systematically shuts down the body, while the mind, it stays completely sharp. For decades, finding a cure has felt, well, almost impossible. So, when you're faced with a challenge this huge, this multifaceted, where do you even begin? I mean, how do you possibly organize a fight against a disease that seems to attack on so many different fronts all at once? Well, it turns out the answer isn't some single, brilliant soloist working alone in a lab. No, it takes an entire orchestra. The fight against ALS is really a symphony of coordinated action, with all these different players working from the very same sheet of music. So let's break down just why this is such a complex challenge. The battle against ALS spans literally everything from basic genetics all the way to daily patient care. That means no single lab or company or government agency could ever hope to tackle it all by themselves. And every orchestra needs a conductor, right? In the world of ALS research, that role is played by a very special type of organization, the multipurpose nonprofit. They're the ones standing at the podium guiding the entire effort. Okay, so what exactly is a multi-purpose nonprofit? Well, think of them as the essential connective tissue of this whole operation. They aren't just focused on one thing. They support many different parts of the fight all at once. They're funding the science, supporting patients, and pushing for policy change. And this distinction is absolutely key. A specialized accelerator, for example, might act like a project manager for one specific thing, like a single drug trial. But these nonprofits, they're the ecosystem coordinators. They connect all the dots between academia, industry, government, and the patients themselves. And they do this by playing 5 critical roles, all at the same time. They're the major funders for research, they coordinate all the different players, they build the data infrastructure everyone shares, they advocate for more government investment, and, this is so important, they serve as that direct link to patients and their caregivers. Let's see how this all works in the real world. We're going to zoom in on 3 specific organizations that really perfectly illustrate this model. Now, each one has a slightly different approach, a different style, but they're all working towards the exact same mission. So, here they are. First up, we've got the ALS Association, which is an absolute powerhouse in research funding. Then there's ALS, a newer patient-led group that is laser-focused on advocacy and creating systemic change. And finally, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which brings decades of experience building clinical infrastructure for a whole range of related diseases, including ALS. Okay, so how does this all actually come together to create a real symphony of progress? Let's take a look at how these groups turn funding, data, and advocacy into real, tangible momentum against this disease. First, let's talk about funding the soloists, those brilliant scientists doing the foundational work. The ALS Association alone has committed over $162 million since just 2014. I mean, that is a massive investment that gives researchers the freedom to explore bold new ideas and chase down innovative therapies. And, it's not just about funding today's projects. It's also about funding people for the future. Programs like this fellowship ensure there's a continuous pipeline of talent, training that next generation of scientists who are going to join the fight. Now, for an orchestra to work, everyone has to have the same sheet music. This quote really gets to the heart of it. These organizations are creating that shared foundation. They're building the data and the infrastructure that everyone in the fields can follow. And here's what that sheet music actually looks like in practice. You've got the PROACT database, which is the world's largest collection of ALS clinical trial data. The MDA's MovieR Hub tracks real-world data from thousands of patients. And then platforms from ALS like Signal and Focus bring the patient's own voice and experience directly into the research process. It's basically a shared library of knowledge for the entire world. All this coordination leads to some incredible efficiencies. Just take the Healy ALS platform trial, supported by the MDA. Instead of the old, slow way of testing one drug at a time, this platform tests multiple treatments at once. It fundamentally speeds up the entire performance. But a great performance also has to think about its audience, right? ALS makes sure the patient experience is front and center. The rating system looks at trials and asks, how humane and accessible is this? Are the travel demands reasonable? Do patients get access to the drug after the trial ends? It ensures the research actually serves the people it's meant to help. All right, now let's talk about getting a standing ovation from Congress. Since 2019, these advocacy efforts have helped secure over $1.6 billion in federal funding. That is the result of a coordinated push to make the government a key player in this orchestra. A huge landmark achievement of this advocacy was the Act for ALS. This one piece of legislation unlocked around $100 million every single year for research and, this is crucial, for programs that give patients access to experimental drugs even outside of traditional trials. And you can see the direct impact right here. Through really targeted advocacy, these groups help double the Department of Defense's ALS research budget, from $20 million up to $40 million. That's a concrete, measurable win. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? What does this all boil down to? It's the power of collaboration. None of these amazing achievements happened in a vacuum. They're the direct result of these conductors working together, with each one playing to its own unique strengths. And here's a perfect real-world duet for you. The advocacy powerhouse I Am ALS partnered up with the funding giant, the ALS Association, on a $500,000 grant for critical biomarker research. This is exactly what it looks like when the conductors team up to create something powerful. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. This model of coordinated, multifaceted leadership has been incredibly effective against a disease as tough as ALS. So the question is, what other huge challenges, from climate change to other rare diseases, could we solve if we just assembled the right orchestra?